Nice and simple, just really simple like that. Hey pals, welcome back to a new video. Today, I wanted to cover something quite simple. It's just my setup and workflow for doing NPC idle animations or animations for NPCs in general in AEST. So I'm just going to show you kind of like how I set up my document and a walkthrough of how I might do an idle animation, and hopefully you enjoy it. So let's get started. Here I am in AEST, and I've got my basic document set up. Here is a character that I have been working on. I've got an idle pose, but I don't have an idle animation for this character yet. So the way that I set my doc in order to make this work is, for my game, I usually give myself like a one tile border outside of this main canvas. Most of that has to do with little things like shaders. You know, if I want to do an outline shader on this character, I need to have pixels around the character to fill in. So I usually give myself a nice big border, as well as like for any animations, if the character is going to be animating, you know, in an expressive way, I want to give them space for their arms and legs to move around. So the center of this sprite is going to be the pivot point. We've got this 64 by 64 square plus an extra tile of padding. Now behind, I've got two layers. One is my reference character. This is my main character in the game, and he can just sit here nicely. This is mostly for the design of these NPCs. I need to know like how tall they're going to be relative to the main character, how they fit color-wise, that kind of thing. And then I've got like a background flat color. This can be used basically to, you know, as I'm animating, sometimes the colors of these checkerboards can be a little much or a little inconsistent. If I want to keep something that's like super flat, I'll pick this color here, and I might change this. Like, it's something that I change quite regularly as I'm working, just to see under different lighting conditions whether certain body parts and elements of the silhouette are visible or less visible. So, you know, if we were to take like a darker color, you know, maybe the eye looks a little bit different than in, you know, lighter color. So I've got this layer in the back. It's just something that I keep there, and I link both of these layers, so the player character and this character. Now, with a lot of my more active animations, you've seen me go through this process of doing, you know, very layer intensive draft animations for things like attacks and run animation. But for an idle, because we only have one key pose, and this is assuming that you are doing an idle that is more simple, then it's kind of okay to do more simplistic adjustments to a keyframe like this. So rather than do our layer approach, I'm just going to do some tweaking. Now, that's not to say that you can't have more advanced idle animations. One of the things that I've been going for in my game is I've been looking to have animations that move between states. So a character like shifting their weight or turning and looking somewhere else. These are more expressive movements that you can kind of stagger out once every 5 seconds or so that feel natural, without trying to make the character look like they're constantly heaving for air. And that's a risk in general with characters, you know, at 64 pixels or smaller. You know, even 1 pixel up and down can feel like a lot. So if your game's trying to go for something more natural, it can be a risk to over animate something that should be very simple, especially if it's not in the character's nature to breathe that way. So this character, she's quite stoic, she's quite seasoned, and so I want her to seem calm. So that's what I'm thinking about before I start. Now the first thing I want to do is make a new tag and call this idle. I keep a lot of my character animations in single documents like this, and I separate them with these tags. I also have an export script that I've just mapped to Shift T that I can use to export each of those tags as their own sprite sheet. So that's how I do my animation in my game, and you can find this script in my turbocharge your AEST workflow video. So we've got a reference, we've got a nice idle here. I sometimes will copy and paste this and then just put this on a layer as well. And I might just put that actually on this side here. We'll call this ref. And maybe just for the sake of the workflow, I might make this like 128. Just so I can put this one out of the way and have like a nice clear space to look at here. I don't want to get too distracted. let's say we want this to be just a simple idle. We're going between two major sort of points. Exhale, inhale. I'm going to take all of the stuff that's above the hips and I'm going to shift it down 1 pixel. So these are my two, states, I suppose. And I'm going to give 10 frames for this. Like most of this stuff is like a holding. So we can do it this way, and I do prefer to do it this way, just in case I want to do some more subtle sub-pixel animations during these pauses, right? Like if you look at this, we've got 1 up and 1 down over 5 frames. So the approaches we can take is we can try to modulate those slowly over the course. So it's a slow exhale, a slow inhale over 10 frames. Or we can do like 2 or 3 frames either side. So it's like inhale over 3 frames, exhale over 3 frames, and everything in the middle can just be kind of like either like repeated frames, or you can even extend the duration of these frames. Now for my game, I don't have any way of interpreting these durations. So for me, I'd have to then go into the engine and duplicate the frames, or tolerate them being duplicated here. I'm going to try to like just keep it really simple, and a little bit of wasted data is not a big issue. I might even go to 12 frames actually. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fine. So what I want to do is take this transition point and kind of smoothen it out a little bit. In order to make this feel subtle, right now it feels quite jarring because everything moves at once. But I think what I can do is start with the core elements first and then animate kind of like extending outwards to the extremities. So we can start with the chest and we can start bringing down parts of this. So we can take maybe this part here and start descending that and start just smoothing a lot of this out. And I might even bring some of this up and then feather out this so it's more of a sub-pixel drop. Okay, so this middle tone, it's almost like the white is moving from white to gray to black, or to the darker gray, over 3 frames, and it makes it feel a lot less jarring. And we might even keep one of these here, so it's this again feels like a transition because it's like 3 pixels moving to 1 pixel, moving to no pixels on this line, which also feels like a transition. Now I might take this frame, move it back 1 so that we can do it over more than that. And make it go even more smooth. So here we've got 2 pixels of the gray and then 5 pixels, and then we transition down. We can even bring this in a little to continue that out. And I think at this stage, I'm happy to essentially copy this and flip it for the other side. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to preserve the material characteristics of this metal breastplate, right? The idea is it's not something that can be deformed too much. So even if I want to do some sub-pixel stuff here, it needs to be quite snappy. So I've removed some of the, smaller, fine adjustments and just saved them for the larger ones. And I think we still get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames of transition here, which is nice. And so we can, at this stage, because we haven't done any of the secondary motion, we could take all of this, copy it. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 frames. We're going to start it on frame 12 and we're going to wrap it around. So we're going to paste it at frame 12. So now we have 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we can reverse these frames. And then we can take these back here and move them over to here. So now we should have this boomeranging up and down. And I want to keep this inhale a little longer, 2 more frames at least. Maybe even a couple more frames on this side too. And I'm just going to keep going until I feel comfortable. And in engine, we could probably take all of these idle frames and call that its own animation, and then play an exhale inhale. So just this part here, that can just be the animation that plays and transitions into an idle that just holds. It doesn't have to be quite this many frames, but for the sake of just us today, right here, right now, animating it, I want to be able to feel it and see it as I would in game, and that's why I've got this many frames. So we're happy here. This is fine moving so far. I want to do a little more secondary motion. So when we start to shift down here, what I'm going to do is have the hands respond a little bit later. So I'm going to, instead of dropping them down, I'm going to move them out. And let's have that happen a little further up. And I want that to be a little more like delayed. I want that to take a few more frames. So we're just gonna see what we can get away with here. So then on this frame, we're gonna include a little bit more transition. Maybe even flare this out slightly more, just to give us a little more something. And the same for the arms. Maybe we could even slightly shift some of this shoulder pad stuff around. And I think this frame, it should be like as close as we can get it to the last frame. Because I don't want it to feel like we're moving evenly. I want it to feel like we're moving so it's like out, almost finished, and then finished. So this here is probably a little too high. Cramp this down a little so it's like just getting it as close as we can to that last frame. I think that makes it feel more of like a rest. We can definitely flare the hair out. That's an easy one. So let's start with the hair. So as we drop, we're gonna have the hair flare out and then it's gonna rest over 2 frames. So out, down, rest. And especially with this little stray hair, but this way we're gonna have it move from this to this and it's gonna sit up a little. I think we could even drop it down a little and have it spring back up. Normally, I probably wouldn't say that this is very appropriate physically, but I think because this is still kind of cartoony, I actually kind of like it. So I'm going to keep it. And we're going to go for the same thing on the other hairs. So we're going to like maybe just bring this up. Basically, with this line here, when we drop down, it can't go any higher than it was. Okay, so this stuff doesn't really work, but we can flare it out. And we can bring this out a little bit too. Let's shift this up a little bit and out a little bit maybe as well. Not bad. Now, as we rise back up, we can do the same thing with the hair, drop it down a little bit, but probably not as much as if it's coming up. And as I'm looking at this, I think this is probably even a little too much. Probably take away a little bit of that. And we could probably bring this a little bit in, just on this frame. Now I want to do just a little bit here with the legs and the shadow. So let's watch that again. As we drop, I want to see this drop a little bit. Maybe stay dropped here. Now, I wouldn't really go too far with the legs. I mean, technically, like, you know, we could make the knees bend a little bit here or there. I'm more inclined to just shift this shadow just a little bit, keep the silhouette exactly as it is for the legs, because I really don't want the breathing to be too heavy. So I might just shift like this up here, and then on these 2 frames, keep it up. Yeah, nice and simple. Just really simple like that. And I'm just wary here on this edge. I'm watching it sort of pop and I don't really like that. So I'm going to take some pixels away. So we're in a pretty good spot now. I'm pretty happy with how things are looking, and I don't think I want to edit any more of this visually, but I think we've got probably too many frames. So let's take away from this last frame here, let's take away all of the frames where we think we can. This idle becomes breathe. Okay. And we can just take this looping frame. So it loops on frame 4 here. So what I'll do is I'll take frames 1, 2, and 3 and put them at the end. And then make breathe 13 frames so that it fits the end there. So now this is our idle frame. We drop, we return, and that's it. So now we could probably take this frame 1 and then call this a new tag idle. And now we can sit here and then we can play this. And then we can sit back here again for as long as we want. And we can have the character breathe, you know, periodically or whatever we want to do in the script. My animation system allows me to play a 1-frame animation for as long as I want. So I could say, hold this for 2 seconds or hold this for 1 second and then play a breathe and then go back to the start and do the same thing again. So in my engine, I could do it this way. If you wanted to keep it really simple, you could just have one giant animation, which is the whole thing, as long as you know how many frames you want. So yeah, that's what I would do. Before we export, we should probably make sure that our reference is not in the frame and drop this down to the original canvas size. Don't forget that. So take this, export it, and now our breathe animation will look like this. So that's all we get. I'll take that into Unity, slice it up, put it in an animation file, and play that on a loop. So that's it. That's how easy it is to take an idle frame and turn it into a very simple idle animation. Like I said, there's way more you can do with this, but for this video, that's all we'll be doing today. Thank you so much. As always, I've been Adam, you've been the Pixel Pals. This has been the Indie Tales Pixel Art class. Until next time. Hey pal, thanks for watching, and thanks most especially to the patrons and Twitch subs who support this channel and my game dev project Insignia. To find out more, click the links in the description below. And if you like this video, tell YouTube by clicking the like button, and then YouTube will tell me, and then I'll make more videos. That's nice. Thanks again, and until next time.